every Blood Angel knows the story. Their Primarch died aboard the Vengeful Spirit, murdered by Horus at the height of the heresy. The Angel's broken body was recovered, entombed, and mourned for 10,000 years. But what if that's only half of the truth? What if Sanguinius didn't truly die that day? What if he transcended? The Sanguinor appears when the Blood Angels face their darkest moments. A golden angel wreathed in light, turning impossible feats into miraculous victories. The chapter calls him the Exemplar, a manifestation of their Primarch's nobility, but they're dancing around the obvious truth. The Sanguinor isn't a reflection or a psychic echo. He is Sanguinius, transformed by his sacrifice into something the Imperium refuses to name. A loyalist demon prince, an angel of the warp bound to the Emperor's will, spending eternity fighting alongside his father in the immaterium while manifesting in real space when his sons face annihilation. The evidence has always been there, we've just been too afraid to see it. The official narrative frames Sanguinius' death as tragedy. The Primarch fought Horus, knew he couldn't win, died buying time for the Emperor. Heroic, final. But the details tell a different story. Sanguinius possessed true prescience, not vague premonitions, but crystal clear visions of potential futures with the same clarity you and I see the present moment. Throughout the entire heresy, he watched himself die. Thousands of variations, thousands of outcomes, but always the same ending. Horus's talon piercing his chest. He knew the exact moment, the exact place, the exact circumstances. And he walked into that throne room anyway, not despite knowing he would die, because he knew he would die. That distinction matters. What the Imperium calls courage, what they frame as noble sacrifice, was something else. It was a deliberate, intentional, calculated ritual. The warp doesn't just respond to emotion or violence, it responds to meaning. Slaanesh didn't claw into existence through random Eldar excesses. It required millions engaging in specific acts with deliberate intent to birth something new. When Horus killed Sanguinius, knowing what the angel represented, knowing Sanguinius had foreseen this and chosen it anyway, that death carried psychic weight orders of magnitude beyond any battlefield casualty. Sanguinius didn't just die. He performed a sacrifice so charged with psychic resonance that the warp itself took notice. And when the warp notices a Primarch's death under those circumstances, it doesn't let them simply cease to exist. 4 Primarchs died, or abandoned their humanity with the warp watching. Fulgrim, Angron, Mortarion, Magnus. None of them ceased to exist. They ascended, becoming demon princes of the respective gods. Immortal, empowered, their souls already part warpcraft thanks to the Emperor's genetic sorcery. Merged with warp energies aligned to their fundamental nature. The process isn't mysterious. Physical forms became manifestations of immaterial power. They exist primarily in the warp now, breaking into real space when summoned or when their essence punches through the veil with enough force. Sanguinius' fundamental nature was nobility, self-sacrifice, angelic perfection, absolute loyalty to the Emperor and humanity's survival. Everything the traitor Primarchs abandoned, Sanguinius embodied until his final breath. When he died performing the ultimate sacrifice, saturated with psychic energy aboard a vessel drowning in warp corruption, in full view of gods and demons, his soul underwent the same transformation his brothers experienced, just in reverse. Instead of being claimed by chaos, he was claimed by order. Instead of becoming a demon prince of the dark gods, he became something else, a warp entity aligned with the Emperor's vision, an angel of humanity given eternal form. The Imperium doesn't have words for this because they refuse to acknowledge it could exist, but the mechanics are identical. Demon princes and living saints operate on the same fundamental principles, powered by different sources. Sanguinius became both and neither. A Primarch ascended not through corruption but through apotheosis, given immortal form through the same warpcraft that created him in the first place. What the blood carries. The Black Rage proves it. Every Blood Angel carries genetic memory of Sanguinius' death, and when the psychic shock overwhelms them, they relive those final moments. But the chapter doesn't talk about what's actually happening. The Black Rage isn't memory playback, it's an active connection. When a Blood Angel falls to the rage, he doesn't remember Sanguinius dying the way you'd recall something from the past. He experiences it happening now. Present tense, fresh, raw. The chaplains describe it as a psychic wound that never heals, a scream echoing forever. Genetic memory doesn't work that way. Genetic memory is static, encoded, and past tense. The affliction is active and ongoing, a permanent connection rather than a recorded playback. Sanguinius' death became a permanent fixture in the warp, a moment of such intensity that it exists outside linear time. Every Blood Angel carries a psychic connection to their Primarch through their gene seed, and when that connection gets overwhelmed, they fall into that eternal moment. Not the memory, the event itself, still happening, always happening, forever happening in the space where warp and reality blur. And sometimes, not always but sometimes, when they're drowning in that moment, Blood Angels report seeing the angel standing beside them, whole, radiant, and very much not dead. The red thirst follows similar mechanics. Blood Angels don't just crave blood from random mutation, they're instinctively reinforcing their connection to Sanguinius. Blood is life, and life opposes chaos's entropy, aligned with the Emperor's domain. When a Blood Angel drinks deep, he's performing a ritual whether he knows it or not. That strengthens his bond to the angel. The thirst intensifies when the chapter faces its greatest threats. Not just coincidence or stress. They need Sanguinius most in these moments, and when the need burns bright enough, he answers. Official records on the Sanguinor are deliberately vague, which already tells us something. The Blood Angels know more than they're saying, but battlefield reports, eyewitness accounts, and recorded manifestations reveal an unmistakable pattern. The Sanguinor appears exclusively to save Blood Angels or their successor chapters. Never Imperial Guard regiments facing annihilation. Never other Space Marine chapters on the brink of destruction. Never random human populations about to be overrun. Only the sons of Sanguinius. He shows up at the moment of greatest peril, when defeat seems mathematically certain, when chaos threatens to overwhelm everything the angel built. He fights with the golden blade and impossible grace, radiating light that sends demons shrieking back into the warp. Then, once victory is secured, he vanishes. No explanation, no conversation, no acknowledgement. Gehenna provides the clearest example. The Blood Angels faced Bandha himself, the greater demon who had broken Sanguinius' legs during the Siege of Terra. The chapter was being slaughtered. Commander Dante lay broken, his warriors dying by the dozen, and Bandha stood poised to desecrate everything Sanguinius had built. Then golden light split the battlefield. The Sanguinor appeared between the demon and Dante, and what followed wasn't a fight, it was a statement. Bandha, who had wounded a Primarch, fled before the Sanguinor's assault. The demon recognized what it faced, even if the Imperium refuses to. The survivors didn't call him the Sanguinor in their initial reports. They called him Sanguinius. Every account before the chaplains revised them for official records identified their Primarch by name. They saw him, they knew him, and the chapter quietly ensured that those original reports disappeared into restricted archives. This is textbook warp entity behavior. Khorne's champions appear where blood flows freely. Nurgle's plague bearers emerge in places of despair and decay. The Sanguinor comes when Sanguinius' sons face destruction, drawn by their psychic distress like an iron to a lodestone. He exists primarily in the warp and crosses over only when the veil thins enough and the need burns bright enough. But the details seal it. The Sanguinor doesn't fight like Sanguinius. He is Sanguinius in every measurable way. Same height, same build, same combat style. Same overwhelming presence that makes even Chaos Space Marines hesitate. When he arrives, Blood Angels report feeling their Primarch's presence. That distinctive psychic signature they all carry deep in their gene memory. Some describe seeing double, watching the Sanguinor fight while simultaneously feeling Sanguinius' consciousness brush against their minds. The experience isn't symbolic or metaphorical, it's recognition. The chapter sometimes whispers that the Sanguinor might be Azkaellon, the first captain of the Sanguinary Guard, eternally serving his Primarch even in death. It's a comfortable lie. Azkaellon was noble, yes, legendary even, but he was still just a space marine. The power that Sanguinor wields, the way greater demons flee from him, the psychic resonance that drops blood angels to their knees. That's not an Astartes, no matter how exceptional. That's Primarch level power, the kind of presence that makes the warp itself recoil. Everyone who's seen him knows it, even if they can't say it out loud. They're the same being. The consciousness is identical because it's the same soul wearing different masks depending on what's needed. In real space, when physical manifestation is required, he appears as the Sanguinor. Golden, masked, radiating undeniable power, but maintaining just enough ambiguity for an Imperium that can't afford to acknowledge what he became. In the warp, he exists as himself, fighting alongside the Emperor in battles mortals will never witness. The real question: what is Sanguinius actually doing when he's not manifesting to save his sons? The Emperor sits entombed on the golden throne, his body a corpse sustained by psychic will and 1,000 daily sacrifices. But his consciousness roams the warp, an entity of colossal power locked in eternal combat with the dark gods. We know this is true. Demons fear him. The Astronomicon burns across the galaxy despite all logic saying it shouldn't. The webway breach beneath Terra hasn't consumed the Imperial Palace, even though every demon prince in existence wants it to. The Emperor fights a war in the immaterium, has been fighting it for 10,000 years. By every account, he's doing it alone. His perpetual companions are gone, dead, scattered, or lost to time. The other Primarchs are missing or corrupted. He faces the unified attention of 4 dark gods with nothing but his own vast power. Except that's not quite accurate. The Emperor has always been protected by angels. Before the heresy, those angels wore crimson armor and called themselves the Ninth Legion. They died in droves to keep their Genefather alive, throwing themselves into impossible odds because that's what angels do. After the heresy, after Sanguinius fell, that protection didn't end, it transformed. Sanguinius understood his father better than any of his brothers. He grasped the Emperor's visions in ways that Horus never could, accepted the brutal mathematics required to save humanity, and shared the Emperor's core nature. Both inspired absolute loyalty. Both bore wings as symbols of transcendence. Both wielded psychic power with surgical precision rather than brute force. When the Emperor looked at Sanguinius, he saw what a Primarch should be. When Sanguinius sacrificed himself, when his death released enough psychic energy to fundamentally alter his existence, his body didn't drift into the oblivion or get claimed by chaos. It went to the Emperor because that's where it had always belonged. Sanguinius fights alongside his father in the Great Game now. When demons assault the Emperor's consciousness, an angel meets them with golden blade drawn. When the dark gods probe for weaknesses in humanity's psychic bulwark, they find Sanguinius standing guard. The Emperor can't manifest physically. He's bound to the throne, tethered to Terra by chains of duty and necessity. But his angel can manifest, and does whenever the situation demands it. This explains why the Sanguinor's interventions are so precise. He doesn't appear randomly or patrol the galaxy looking for blood angels in trouble. He shows up exactly when and where he's needed most because he's operating with the Emperor's strategic vision, seeing the galaxy from the perspective of humanity's collective unconscious. The Emperor knows when the blood angels face extinction, and he sends his angel to save them. The blood angels believe this, all of them. They just won't say it out loud. The chapter maintains Sanguinius' body in stasis aboard the Red Tier, preserved with reverent care, but they don't treat it like a corpse. They treat it like a relic, a connection point, a holy anchor. Blood angels on pilgrimage don't mourn their Primarch's bier. They pray to it, ask for guidance, seek strength. They're not honoring the dead. They're communing with something they know is listening. The chaplains speak of Sanguinius in present tense. Read their battle prayers, study their liturgies. The angel watches over us, not watched, not past tense when he walked among them. Watches now, currently. The sanguinary priests teach that Sanguinius' sacrifice made him eternal, that his death granted perspective beyond mortal understanding. They frame it in religious metaphor, acceptable to imperial doctrine, but the underlying claim is explicit. Sanguinius isn't gone. When pressed, when the walls come down, blood angels who've seen the Sanguinor speak with absolute certainty. They don't describe echoes or symbols or psychic projections. They describe their father, returned from death, still fighting for them, still protecting them. still loving them despite every horror the galaxy has thrown at his sons over 10 millennia. The chapter maintains official ambiguity because the Inquisition would have questions they can't afford to answer. Admitting the truth would invite investigation, purity tests, examination of gene seed, accusations of demonic corruption. Better to keep calling him the Exemplar, to speak in metaphor and allegory, to maintain plausible deniability. But individually, in the quiet moments between battles, every Blood Angel knows their Primarch died, and death wasn't strong enough to hold him. The Imperium can't acknowledge this. Not because the evidence doesn't exist, it absolutely does, in overwhelming quantity, but because it shatters their entire framework on how the warp operates. Imperial doctrine divides warp entities into two categories: saints and demons. Saints are temporary manifestations of the Emperor's will, pure vessels with no independent existence. Demons are irredeemable corruption. This binary prevents uncomfortable questions about the warp's true nature, that it's neutral, that humans can become permanent warp entities through means other than chaos worship. The line between saint and demon is mostly about allegiance rather than fundamental difference. Sanguinius breaks their categories completely. He's not a temporary manifestation. He's been appearing for 10,000 years. He's not a passive vessel. He fights independently, makes tactical decisions, chooses when and where to show up. He has agency, personality, continuity of existence, all the markers of demonhood without any corruption. If the Imperium admits that Sanguinius exists as a permanent, independent warp entity, they'd have to admit that loyal servants can achieve this state through willing sacrifice, which means explaining why they execute anyone else who tries, why they treat psychers as inherently dangerous, why they burn people for attempting to transcend their flesh. The entire justification for the black ships, for the Astronomican's feeding mechanism, for millennia of Imperial policy. All of it crumbles if Primarchs can become beneficent warp entities. Strategic ambiguity is their only option. The Sanguinor is a mystery, a miracle, an exemplar of the blood, never a Primarch, never Sanguinius himself, because calling him by his true name means confronting what the name implies. Sanguinius isn't unique, he's just the most obvious. Living saints demonstrate identical mechanics, warriors of exceptional faith who die dramatically, then return wreathed in golden light, unkillable, appearing and vanishing as needed. The Imperium calls them miracles, but they're using the same principles as demon princes. Saint Celestine has died dozens of times and keeps returning because her consciousness exists primarily in the warp, taking form through humanity's faith. She's a warp entity maintained by belief, operating on the same fundamental level as the Sanguinor, just on a smaller scale. The Legion of the Damned exhibits the same behavior, space marines who died but didn't stop fighting, appearing from flames at humanity's darkest moments, vanishing without trace afterwards. The Imperium dismisses them as ghosts or hallucinations because acknowledging them means acknowledging that loyal servants can persist after death as warp-bound warriors. Even the Emperor himself proves the principle, sitting on the Golden Throne technically dead for 10 millennia, consciousness vast and powerful in the warp, taking form through saints and angels and psychic phenomena. If he can exist as a corpse-bound warp god, why not his most loyal son? The evidence spans every documented case, extraordinary sacrifice witnessed by millions, psychic resonance powerful enough to anchor consciousness in the warp, and the continued manifestation wherever faith burns brightest. Sanguinius fits this pattern perfectly because he wasn't following a template. He created it. The first loyalist Primarch to transcend death without falling to chaos, proving that humanity's champions could achieve immortality through sacrifice rather than damnation. Understanding the Sanguinor's true nature changes everything about how we interpret the Blood Angels. Their suffering isn't meaningless genetic degradation, it's the price of maintaining connection to their ascended Primarch across the Veil of Death. The red thirst and black rage aren't flaws but features, psychic mechanisms that keep the chapter bound to Sanguinius. Every Blood Angel who falls to the rage experiences his father's sacrifice directly, reinforcing the psychic pattern that allows the angels to break through when needed most. It explains the Blood Angels' unique position in Imperial hierarchy. Other chapters revere their Primarchs as historical figures. The Blood Angels worship theirs as a living god because he is a living god by any functional definition of the term. They're not deluded, they're not heretical, they're responding accurately to reality, to the being who has protected them for 10,000 years. And it suggests possibilities that should terrify and inspire in equal measure. If Sanguinius could ascend through sacrifice, if he fights besides the Emperor in the warp, what about the other loyal Primarchs? Is Ferrus Manus' warped self still haunting the void, seeking vengeance against the traitors who killed him? Does Rogaldorn exist as a warp entity bound to the Phalanx, watching over his sons? When the 13th Black Crusade broke against Cadia and the planet shattered, did someone whisper orders to Imperial defenders in voices they recognized but couldn't quite place? The Imperium may have more guardian angels than anyone realizes. Loyalist Primarchs who chose eternal service over final rest, who couldn't abandon humanity even in death. The Emperor's original vision required 20 generals to lead his armies. He may still have them, just not in the way everyone expected. There's a simple truth the Blood Angels refuse to question, one that cuts through all the theology and political maneuvering. When the Sanguinor appears, Blood Angels don't see an angel, they see their Primarch. The recognition is instant, certain and absolute. No Blood Angel has ever encountered the Sanguinor and thought, "This reminds me of Sanguinius," or "This seems like an echo." They know that it's him. That recognition exists because gene memory works both ways. Blood Angels carry psychic imprints of Sanguinius, that's well documented, but Sanguinius carries imprints of them. Every Blood Angel who ever lived, every son who bore his gene seed, every warrior who fought in his name across 10,000 years. When the Sanguinor breaks into real space, he doesn't arrive as a stranger learning the battlefield. He arrives already knowing the names of the Blood Angels fighting beside him, understanding their tactics, responding to their needs before they voice them. The Imperium demands we believe Sanguinius died aboard the Vengeful Spirit, that his sacrifice ended with a corpse on the deck, that 10,000 years of manifestations are something else, anything else, rather than the obvious answer staring everyone in the face. The Blood Angels know better. They've witnessed his return across countless battlefields, felt the unmistakable presence of their Gene Father, and recognized him with a certainty that transcends doubt. Their father didn't abandon them, he couldn't. His love for his sons proved stronger than death itself. Sanguinius didn't die, he transformed, became what he always represented, an angel, eternal and golden, humanity's champion fighting in both warp and real space, fighting alongside his father until the galaxy is finally saved or finally burns. The Sanguinor isn't a mystery. He's a Primarch who loved his sons too deeply to let the warp claim him, who understood that true sacrifice means eternal service, who chose to become something impossible because his sons would need him in the long night ahead. And 10,000 years later, he's still keeping his promise. The Angel of Baal watches over his sons, always has, always will, because that's what angels do.